idea what is meant by breathing and respiration, right? So breathing means just the inhalation and the exhalation of air, whereas the respiration, we will take the oxygen. So during the inhalation, oxygen will be supplied to the blood. So that will transport throughout the blood, reach all the cells, and it will finally oxidize the food. Once the food is properly oxidized, we will get the energy. And we know that all the living organisms are having the need of energy to do all the activities like transportation, movement, respiration. Even while you are sleeping, also you need energy, because though we are sleeping, our brain will be doing lot of activities and it will be coordinating with all the organs in our body. So that's why energy is required. Let us say, suppose you eat any food. That food will be containing enough carbs, proteins, fats, lipids, everything will be there. Suppose if you take aloo paratha or any potato chips, or maybe some curry, brinjal curry, so that will be having some amount of starch, right? So that food will be hydrolyzed. The food undergo the process hydrolysis, and finally, any food which you eat, that should finally convert into the glucose. And that glucose molecule, after complete breaking down, glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain. So once all these processes are completed, what do we get here is carbon dioxide, water, and the more amount of energy if the food is breaking down in the process of aerobic respiration. And we all know that the plants and the blue-green algae can perform the photosynthesis. How are they performing? They trap the light energy and they convert that into the chemical energy, right? So light energy is coming from the sun, and sun is the ultimate source of energy on this earth. And chemical energy will be stored in the form of carbohydrates or in the form of bonds, maybe the glucose, sucrose, starch, all this. Now we know this, the plants are having the special type of cells which is making them to perform the photosynthesis. That is the chlorophyll cells. Sorry, chlorophyll pigments. Mesophyll cells contain the chloroplast. Those cells will contain the pigments, and those pigments trap the light energy so the plant can synthesize the food. And we know this, all the mesophyll cells, they are present in the outer layers, or they are located superficially so that they can trap more and more light energy, utilize it for the photosynthesis, right? So coming to the plants, we say that plants generally perform photosynthesis, but the thing is, we have the two parts: photosynthetic parts, non photosynthetic parts. Photosynthetic parts like leaves, young stem, they will perform the photosynthesis, they prepare their food. But the non photosynthetic parts like fruits, root, stem, flowers, though they are present on the plant, they cannot perform the photosynthesis. That's why they need to depend on the photosynthetic plants for the food. So they need the energy from these photosynthetic parts. Same way, animals also depending on a plant. Either we depend directly or indirectly. If we depend directly, we are herbivores. And if we are indirectly depending on that, those are carnivores. Because carnivores will eat the herbivores, herbivores depending on a plants. So that's why animals are depending both directly and indirectly on the plants for the food. And we know that the food will be stored in the chloroplast. If you take the eukaryotic cell, that is the plant cell. Okay. So in that, the food will be broken down to give the energy. And this breaking process is not occurring in a single step. It is a multi-step process and different pathways are involved in it. First is glycolysis. The glucose molecule will be breaking down in the cytoplasm, and the next is the end products of glycolysis will reach the mitochondria to perform the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. And this respiration process is the enzyme involved process. Obviously substrates are required because substrate only should go and bind with the enzyme. So the best respiratory substrates are the carbohydrates, because once the carbohydrates are there, our respiratory system will be so active. All the enzymes are so active, they will go and breaks the carbs first to release the more energy. If the carbs are not available, they will depend on our triglycerides, or they go and cut down our fats. So somehow they need to get the energy. If carbs are not there, they take the fats, they take the organic acids, or the proteins can be used as the respiratory substrates. And that's the reason during this respiration process only the food is breaking down, or the food is being oxidized, or the energy is being produced, right? So that's why respiration is considered to be a energy producing system, not the digestion. The energy will be stored in the form of bonds, like CC bonds, carbon carbon bonds. If you take the glucose, six carbon molecules will be there, then the pyruvate, then it break into acetyl CoA, then these bonds are completely broken down to give the energy. So that will be stored in the carbon carbon bonds. And all the energy present in the respiratory substrates will not be released directly or freely into the cell, but that energy will be trapped in the high energy molecule called as the ATPs. ATPs are considered to be the energy currency of the cells, because if it is directly released, all the cells will use up the energy. Whenever we need the energy, it may not be available. So that's the reason it will be trapped in the form of ATP. So we'll take the next one. And we know that it is not freely available, and the energy is not released in a single step, but that process involves the many steps. Suppose let us take the glycolysis. The glucose molecule, we know the formula C6H12O6. So this glucose molecule is a 6 carbon molecule. Let us say these are the 6 carbon molecules. This will be breaking down into the 3 carbon molecules, that is pyruvate. Two molecules of pyruvate will be formed from the one glucose molecule. Breaking down of the glucose, we call it as a glycolysis. But the thing is, it's not a single step. Many steps are involved, almost 10 steps are involved to break the one glucose molecule into the two molecules of pyruvate. So this pyruvate can be used to make the amino acids, to make the proteins, or it will enter the respiratory pathway like Krebs cycle, electron transport chain to release the energy. So this breaking down of one molecule is not occurring in a single step. Okay. So why the many small steps are involved? So that we will be getting the more number of intermediates, and it will minimize the loss of energy, because anywhere reaction is occurring, there will be a loss of energy in the form of heat. So to minimize that energy loss, many small steps are involved to give this pyruvate or to give the product. So here the question, NCERT question is, do the plants really breathe like animals? Answer is yes. How we are taking the oxygen, how the humans or how the animals require the oxygen, same way plants also require oxygen, and they release the carbon dioxide. And why do plants require oxygen? Thing is, they need to oxidize the food same like animals to give the energy. Okay. And when coming here, the highest level of organization can be seen in the plant is the organ and organ system level. So when it is coming to the plants, they do not have a proper system like animals. So how we have respiratory system, circulatory system, excretory system. So that organ system was not developed in the case of plants. Then how the gaseous exchange can be done? So in the plants, the gaseous exchange can be done by every part of the plant. If you take the leaf that has the stomata, if you take the stem that has lenticels, but in some cases, roots will also helpful in respiration, that is the pneumatophores. So they do not have a well respiratory system, but they have individual parts to perform the gaseous exchange. And how the large trees are surviving without any respiratory system, because comparative to the human body size, plant size is bigger. Then how that large or how that big trees are surviving without a proper respiratory system? First thing is, it doesn't require any system. Every part of the plant body will be having their own gaseous exchange needs. Okay, so very little transport will be occurring from one part to the other, and rest of all the cases, each part is capable of performing the respiration by its own, maybe the stem, leaves, or the roots. And coming here, when it is coming to the plants, the plant parts will respire with a higher rate because animals have the organ system, that is respiratory system. The rate of respiration is less. Plants are not having any respiratory system, but it is having the parts, leaves, the stem. So as many parts are involved, more respiration can be seen, and the more rate of respiration in the plants comparative to the animals. Okay, so large amount of gaseous exchange will occur only during the photosynthesis. Reason is, photosynthesis requires the carbon dioxide. When the carbon dioxide is entering, stomata has to be opened. At that time, carbon dioxide will enter, oxygen will also enter. If any carbon dioxide is left in this plant body, that may be either utilized for the photosynthesis or may be released into the atmosphere. So whenever the stomata opens during the photosynthesis, that time only respiration can also be done. So who is handling this transportation or this exchange? Stomata is handling. The stomata which is present on the leaf, that will be handling the exchange of gases required for photosynthesis parallelly the respiration. Suppose if you observe, we don't have this exchange system and we have a simple mechanism, that is diffusion. If we think, there is a small plant which is 3 feet tall and there is a large plant which is 20 feet tall. Okay, if the gases need to be exchanged from one cell to the other cell by the diffusion process, to reach every part of the plant body, it will take years. So that's the reason every part of the plant body is specialized and it is exchanging the gases. So here if you observe, this is showing the bark or how the lenticels are helpful in the respiration. The outermost layer is the bark, and that bark will be having the splits or called as the lenticels, and innermost layer is the dead cell. Dead cell is surrounded with the living cells. Living cells are surrounded by the bark, and due to the dead cells are increasing, living cells will push the bark, and you can see the irregular breaks on the stem. That gaps are formed called as the lenticels, through which gaseous exchange can be done. And if you observe the root, stem, leaf, the internal structure of all this will be having the loosely packed parenchyma cells, and these parenchyma cells will be having some spaces or the gaps. Those are called as intercellular spaces, through which the gaseous transportation can be done in these parts of the plant. And coming to the difference between respiration and combustion, here respiration will be occurring inside of the cell, no doubt, but combustion cannot occur. Combustion is a chemical process. It is not associated with the living cells. It will occur in the laboratory. Combustion is complete burning, complete charring. That should not occur in our cells, so it will uh, burn our cells. So energy will be released step by step if the respiration is occurring. All the energy will be released simultaneously if the combustion occurs. And most of the energy is stored in the form of ATP molecules, and the ATP is not at all formed in the combustion process. And several intermediates are formed, like glucose 6-phosphate, fructose 6-phosphate, fructose 1,6 bisphosphate, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, DHAP, BPGA, pyruvate. So different intermediates will be formed if it is the respiration. But if it is a combustion, you cannot find intermediates in this process. So that's the difference between the respiration and combustion. Let us go with what's the difference between aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. And we know that aerobic requires the air, mainly the oxygen. Anaerobes doesn't require the oxygen. So aerobic respiration will be occurring in all the living cells because all the living cells require oxygen. Anaerobic respiration will mainly occur in bacteria as well as the fungi. And not only these organisms, when the seeds are germinating or when fruits are becoming fleshy or for the succulent plants, they will break the food anaerobically to get the energy. So aerobic respiration, there is a role of oxygen. Anaerobic doesn't require any oxygen. So what are the end products here? Carbon dioxide and water. But coming to the anaerobic respiration, carbon dioxide, ethanol, alcohol, or the lactic acid will be produced. And if the glucose molecule is completely oxidized in the presence of oxygen, we will get either 38 ATP molecules or 36 ATP molecules. But coming to the anaerobic respiration, only 2 ATP molecules are formed. So these ATPs are very important to remember. Why the 38 are formed in aerobic respiration? Why only 2 formed in anaerobic respiration? So here, this is the aerobic respiration. Let us take a cell, that is eukaryotic cell. Anyhow, nucleus is not having any role in the respiration. Mitochondria is required here. So first step of respiration is glycolysis. Glucose has to break down and it is giving the pyruvate. Now that pyruvate enters the Krebs cycle and it will convert into the acetyl CoA, and the Krebs cycle will be started in mitochondrial matrix. And during the Krebs cycle, all the acetyl CoA will be completely oxidized, and whatever the carbon dioxide is released during the respiration, and during the Krebs cycle, lot of FADH, NADH will be formed that will enter the electron transport chain to release the energy in the form of ATP. So as the three steps are involved, glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain, that's why we are getting the 36 or 38 ATP molecules. But coming here, anaerobic respiration, there is no mitochondria in the bacteria. So that's the reason all the process is occurring in the cytoplasm itself. So in the cytoplasm, glycolysis takes place and there is no Krebs cycle and electron transport chain, there is no mitochondria. So the total ATP which is formed during the glycolysis is only 2. So that's the reason anaerobic respiration gives very less amount of energy, around like 56 to 58 calories of energy. Aerobic respiration will give 686 kilocalories of energy. Now these locations are important. Glycolysis occurs in cytoplasm. Krebs cycle occurs in mitochondrial matrix along with the link reaction. Electron transport chain occurs on the inner membrane of mitochondria. This has to be clear. So here we have some of the organisms which mainly focusing on the anaerobes. Here anaerobes are mainly of two types: facultative anaerobes, obligate anaerobes. Facultative means they are not so strict. Obligate means they are very strict. So anaerobes doesn't require oxygen. Facultative, they are not so strict for the absence of oxygen, means they can survive even oxygen is present. So the examples are staphylococcus, mycoplasma, listeria. These organisms does not require oxygen. If oxygen is present, still they can survive. But coming to the obligate anaerobes, these are very strict. Strict conditions need to be maintained. If the less amount of oxygen is present, they cannot survive. Example is Clostridium, Fusobacterium. So these are the organisms will oxidize the glucose without the oxygen. So obviously they will get the less energy. And this is an important point. We have the process called as the oxidation and reduction we discussed earlier. Oxidation in the sense, what do we say is addition of oxygen or removal of hydrogen. But without the addition of oxygen also, just by the removing of hydrogen, that is also considered as oxidation. So we'll start with the first process, that is glycolysis. And the glycolysis is also called as the EMP pathway. EMP stands for three scientists worked on it: Emden, Meyerhof, and Parnas. So these three scientists explained the glycolysis process. So that's why first letters of the scientists taken and named it as the EMP pathway. And this is also called as universal pathway because this process occurs in every organism, and the location of this glycolysis is the cytoplasm. And we know that glycolysis, breaking down of the sugar, splitting of the glucose molecule, right? So why are we considering it as a universal pathway? There are two reasons. Firstly, cytoplasm is common. Let it be a aerobe or anaerobe, cytoplasm is common. So it is occurring in the cytoplasm and it is present in all the cells. Secondly, it occurs without the use of oxygen. So both the aerobes can perform the glycolysis, anaerobes can also perform the glycolysis. So glycolysis is only the method of respiration when it is coming to the anaerobic organisms. So that's the reason we are considering this as the universal pathway. So let us go with the small outline of this glycolysis. As we mentioned, glucose molecule is breaking down into two molecules of pyruvate, and each pyruvate molecule is 3 carbon compound. Glucose is a 6 carbon compound, and here the molecule is not completely oxidized. Glycolysis is the process where the glucose molecule is partially oxidized, means all the bonds are not broken down completely. If all the bonds are breaking down, then it is complete oxidation. But here, partially breaking down, still bonds are present in the pyruvic acid. If they are also breaking, then we will get the complete energy. So then it is the complete oxidation. So this glycolysis process mainly involving the 10 steps. As we already mentioned, why it is not occurring in a single step, why it required the 10 steps. Reason is 10 steps to control the energy release, and it will maximize the ATP production, and minimum cellular damage occurs. Many intermediate compounds are formed. Every intermediate compound is used in other metabolic pathways. So that's the reason many small steps are involved to minimize the energy loss in the form of heat. Coming to this, what if the glycolysis occurs in a single step? Too much of energy will be released at once, and all the energy will be wasted in the form of heat. If that high amount of heat is generated, it can literally kill the cells. So that's the reason it is not occurring in a single step. And out of 10 steps, we have 3 steps which are not reversible. Means once the molecule is converted into other, then there is no chance of reversing that step. So the first one is glucose molecule is forming the glucose 6-phosphate. This is the very first step in glycolysis. And once the glucose 6-phosphate is formed, then if you are removing the phosphate, you cannot get the glucose. And this is mediated by the enzyme hexokinase. There is a reason why it is becoming the irreversible step. And we know that glucose need to enter the cell to perform the process. At this time, how the glucose is entering, same way it can escape. So it shouldn't escape from the cell to continue the process. So the cells are adding the phosphate to the 6th position. Once the phosphate is added, phosphate is negatively charged molecule. So the whole glucose molecule is attaining the negative charge. Once the negative charge is given to the glucose molecule, that cannot be escaped or it cannot be transported through the cell membrane. So it is being trapped inside of the cytoplasm, and it is very serious to perform the glycolysis. That will be performed by hexokinase. So kinase's function is addition of phosphate or removing of the phosphate. You are adding the phosphate to the hexo sugar, that is 6 carbon sugar. That's why enzyme is hexokinase. And next we have fructose 6 phosphate, third step. Fructose 6 phosphate is converting into fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. Again, the phosphate will be added to the first position of this fructose 6 phosphate molecule. Enzyme is phosphofructokinase. Once you are adding the phosphate to first position of the fructose, you cannot reverse it. And the last step, There is a molecule phosphoenol pyruvate which is formed as an intermediate in the glycolysis, last step. Here phosphoenol group will be removed, only the pyruvate is left. So here there will be a synthesis of ATP anyhow. So pyruvate kinase is the enzyme is mediating it. Out of 10 steps, these 3 steps will remain irreversible. So yes. And when you are observing these reactions, these respiratory reactions, all are enzyme mediated and different enzymes are involved in this process, not the single enzyme. All the reactions which are occurring in the respiration, they are catalyzed by different enzymes, not the single enzyme. And we know that ATP is considered to be an energy currency of cell. And why can't the NADH or FADH? Thing is, if you imagine ATP is just like a currency. You can use it, you can exchange it, you can buy anything with that. But if you have the check or if you have something which is not in a currency form, you need some conversion to use that amount. Same way, ATP is available in the cells can immediately use it. If NADH, FADH2 are there, they cannot be used quickly by the cell, but they are storing lot of energy. They need to convert into the ATPs, then can be used by the cell. Suppose here we have NADH2, FADH2, which are formed in glycolysis or the Krebs cycle. These are just like a checks. You can't even use it directly. So they need to be need to be uh, converted into the currency through the bank. So here the bank is the electron transport chain. Once the one NADH2 is passing through the electron transport chain, we will get the 3 ATP. One FADH2 is passing through the electron transport chain, we get the 2 ATP, right? So these two are like the checks. They are coming from the glycolysis as well as a Krebs cycle. They need to enter the ETC to give the ATP. And how to remember this? If you are writing the NADH2 or FADH2, you can use the letters or you remember as in the electron transport chain. NADH2 is entering first. Okay. FADH2 is entering through the second complex. So if it is entering through the second complex, the energy it is giving is less. If it is entering through the first complex, it is touching all the complexes, so the energy will be released more. So first comes more energy, next comes less energy. You can remember like that. So let us see how the glycolysis process starts. So as we mentioned that glucose is converted into pyruvate, but how the glucose is coming? And if you observe the plant, the stored food material is in the form of sucrose. And we know that this sucrose is a disaccharide and it is also called as the in-wet sugar. So why are we calling it as a in-wet sugar? Because sucrose is formed with the glucose and the fructose. Glucose is a 6 carbon molecule. Fructose is also 6 carbon molecule. Surprisingly, the formula remains the same. Then the difference is glucose is a aldose sugar, fructose is the ketose sugar. CHO aldehyde group is in the glucose, whereas C double bond O ketone group will be there in the fructose. Generally, if you observe the glucose and fructose separately, glucose is having the dextro rotation, whereas fructose have the levo rotation. When these two molecules combine, make a bond to form the disaccharide or the sucrose, it will change the rotation of the sucrose. Sucrose will be having the dextro rotation first. It will rotate towards the right side. But it will change its rotation from right to left, inverting it. So that's the reason it is called as a invert sugar. For the breaking down of the sucrose, the enzyme required here is invertase enzyme. So here is the case. We'll start the glycolysis first. This sucrose molecule, which is the stored food material, it is a disaccharide, with the help of an invertase enzyme, is giving the glucose and the fructose. And we know that we'll talk about the glucose first. Glucose is a 6 carbon compound, whereas the fructose is also 6 carbon compound, but the glucose enters first and the fructose enters next. So it's not that fructose need to enter the same pathway. That will be having their own pathways. It can perform the breaking down of the fructose maybe in other pathways. So suppose the glucose molecule, the first step which is irreversible is the glucose 6-phosphate, right? So in this case, hexokinase or the glucokinase will be adding the phosphate to the glucose molecule. So here there is a consumption of 1 ATP. And for the activation of this enzyme, we require the magnesium. So as the phosphate is being added or the phosphate is being utilized, this step is called as the phosphorylation. Now once this glucose 6-phosphate is formed, so here we mentioned phosphate is attached to the 6th position. So due to this negative charge, that glucose molecule is trapped inside of the cell because the charged molecules cannot pass through the cell membrane. Now glucose 6-phosphate forms the fructose 6-phosphate. So this fructose 6-phosphate, glucose 6-phosphate are isomers. So here the enzyme required is phosphohexoisomerase, and the step is isomerization. Here also we require the magnesium ions, but there is no utilization or the synthesis of ATP. Fructose 6 is becoming the fructose 1,6. Here again, this being the irreversible, you can add the phosphate to the first position of the fructose 6-phosphate, and the phosphate donor is the ATP. So 1 ATP will be consumed here. The enzyme required is phosphofructokinase and the step is phosphorylation. Now up to here, the cell is converted the sucrose into glucose and fructose, and finally we got the fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. Now this molecule will be breaking down into 3 carbon and the 3 carbon. One 3 carbon compound will be having the aldehyde group. It will become the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate or 3-phosphoglyceraldehyde. Other 3 carbon compound will be having the ketone group that will become the DHAP or dihydroxyacetone phosphate. These two are 3 carbon formed from fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. And here for this breaking, the enzyme required is aldolase enzyme, and the step we call it as a cleavage. Again, these steps are reversible. We can reverse this. So if you add this PG and the DHAP, again you can make the molecule that is fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. Now even these two molecules, G3P and DHAP, those two are also interconvertible. Those two are isomers as they are containing the uh, 3 carbons and both are containing the phosphates inside of it. These are triose phosphate isomerases. Triose means 3 carbon. 3 carbon molecules containing the phosphates and both are isomers. That's why the enzyme required is triose phosphate isomerase enzyme. This step we call it as isomerization or interconvertible phase. Yeah. Now let us see how the pyruvic acid is being formed. So we have the PGA here, we have DHAP here. Everywhere they will mention about only one molecule. But remember, both the PGA, DHAP are entering or breaking into other intermediate compounds. Both are forming the 1,1 molecules of pyruvate. So if you observe here, first let us talk about PGA. This is a 3 carbon compound. So 1, 2, 3 carbons, and it is having the phosphate on the 3rd position. Now to this, on the first position, one more phosphate will be added. Usually this glyceraldehyde dehydrogenase enzyme will be converting the NAD into NADH, and some inorganic phosphates will be added in this step. Here ATP is not a phosphate donor. 3 inorganic phosphates will be added and it will become the BPGA. This BPGA converting into 3-phosphoglyceric acid just by losing the phosphate from the first position. So it will become 3-phosphoglyceric acid with the energy release of ATP. Here as the phosphate is being removed, the step is dephosphorylation and the enzyme is phosphoglycerol kinase. Here 3-phosphoglyceric acid is formed. Here you can see the shift of the phosphate from the third position to the second position. So 3-phosphoglyceric acid will become 2-PGA. Here it is a intramolecular shift or the isomerization. The enzyme required is the phosphoglyceromutase. And after this 2-phosphoglyceric acid, after the dehydration with the help of the enolase enzyme, it is forming the phosphoenol pyruvate. Here phosphate and the enol group will be removed, ATP will be formed, and the 3-carbon pyruvate molecule is formed. So whatever the steps which we discussed for G3P, we'll be discussing for DHAP also. So here NADH2 is formed, here also NADH2. So 2 NADH2, here 1 ATP, here 1 ATP, 2 ATP here, and the last phosphoenol pyruvate to pyruvate, here also 1 more ATP. So 2 more ATP. Total 4 ATP. Here 2 NADH2 are formed before 2 ATP are utilized. So let us talk about this energetics. What is the gain of ATP in the glycolysis? When the glucose molecule is breaking into glucose 6-phosphate, 1 ATP is lost, 1 ATP is utilized. When fructose 6-phosphate is converting into fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, 1 more ATP is utilized. And the G3P is becoming the 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, 2 NADH2 are formed. 1 NADH2 in the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, other NADH2 in the DHAP. And 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate to 3-phosphoglycerate, 2 ATP are formed. PEP to pyruvate, 2 ATP are formed. So if you take only the ATP, these are 4 ATP minus 2 ATP, the net gain is only 2. But if you include the NADH2, total gain is this 2 plus 1 NADH2 is equal to 3 ATP. So total 6 ATP, 6 plus 2 is 8. Total gain of ATP is 8. Net gain of ATP is 2. So this is the energetics of the glycolysis. When it is coming to the fate of pyruvate, how this pyruvate molecule is acting after the formation, after the format from glycolysis or maybe any other pathways, if the pyruvate is available, how it is acting. So as we mentioned the glycolysis here, this is a glucose 6-carbon molecule undergoing the glycolysis process. 2 molecules of pyruvate will be formed. Now this pyruvate behaves in presence of oxygen and absence of oxygen, and the different compounds or different products will be released. Suppose let us say pyruvate is being converted into the lactic acid when there is no oxygen. This process is called as lactate fermentation, and pyruvate is 3-carbon, lactic acid is 3-carbon, there is no formation of carbon, there is no loss of carbon, and pyruvate can break into the ethanol, which is a 2-carbon compound, in the absence of oxygen. So lactic acid fermentation, ethanol fermentation, wherever fermentation word comes, remember blindly it is happening in absence of oxygen. So ethanol is being 2-carbon, 1 more will be released in the form of carbon dioxide. And what happens to the pyruvate if it is further breaking down in presence of oxygen? It is forming the acetyl CoA. Acetyl CoA is also 2-carbon. So 1 more carbon will be released. So carbon dioxide releasing taking place only in the ethanol formation and the acetyl CoA formation. But in the lactic acid formation, there is no carbon dioxide released because the pyruvate 3-carbon, lactic acid is also 3-carbon. So let us discuss little briefly. This is a 6-carbon molecule, and glycolysis is occurring, glucose is breaking down, and during the glycolysis no oxygen is involved, no carbon dioxide is released, just the ATP is utilized, ATP is formed, NADH2 is formed, several intermediate compounds are formed. Finally it is giving, after the 10 steps, it's giving 2 molecules of pyruvate. Now this pyruvate, if the enzyme that is lactate dehydrogenase comes when the oxygen is not available, it is forming the lactic acid. As the lactic acid is being 3-carbon compound, there is no carbon dioxide will be released. Mostly lactic acid fermentation or lactic acid is being released in the muscle cells if you are doing the strenuous exercises, and this is temporary. And we have the bacteria, that is lactic acid bacteria, helpful for the conversion of milk into the curd. So here also lactic acid fermentation is taking place. In these two cases, whatever the NADH2 is there, that will be utilized to get the energy to break this molecule further, and it is forming the NAD. And the second case, this pyruvic acid, if there is an enzyme, here two enzymes. One is alcohol dehydrogenase. How we have the lactate dehydrogenase to form the alcohol dehydrogenase. But along with that, ethanol or alcohol, which is a 2-carbon compound. So one carbon is being released from the pyruvate. So that's the reason second enzyme, pyruvate decarboxylase enzyme. It is giving the carbon dioxide by removing the carbon from the pyruvate. So only the 2-carbon molecules are left. So these two are the cases when oxygen is absent. And the next case is what happens if oxygen is present. This is converting into acetyl CoA. So let us see how the ethanol is formed. Usually you can make this ethanol even in the home. Take a beaker and add the grape juice, that is the sugar source, add little yeast, and you cover it or you keep a balloon. If you are leaving it like that for few days, balloon will be slowly swelling up because carbon dioxide air will be filled. And if you are leaving it for 30 days or 2 months, once you are opening it, balloon will be bulged completely, and once you take out the balloon, you can see some pungent strong alcohol smell. So this grape juice, all the yeast is eating the sugar or breaking the sugar, and it is giving the alcohol in absence of oxygen. So usually if this alcohol percentage is increasing, or if it is 13% is there, the yeast is going to die. So how can you separate the alcohol? There is a process called as fractional distillation. So if the distillation process is done, the percentage of alcohol in that beverages are gonna increases. If you are performing the distillation, those beverages are called as the spirits or distilled beverages. If you are not doing it, non-distilled beverages. So the example are wine, beer, cider, all these are non-distilled. Means they are containing the less percentage of alcohol. And the gin, vodka, whiskey, rum, tequila, brandy, all these are distilled beverages will be having the more amount of alcohol percentage. So these two are happening. In absence of oxygen, in both the cases, NADH2 will be utilized to break the pyruvic acid into lactate or ethanol. Coming to this, the third case, if the oxygen is present, the pyruvic acid is breaking down into acetyl CoA, which is a 2-carbon compound, and it is releasing the carbon dioxide. This reaction is called as a link reaction because the glycolysis process and the Krebs cycle process both are connected by this link reaction. So once the acetyl CoA is formed, then glycolysis is completed. Rest of the pyruvate will be completely oxidized, and Krebs cycle completes. NADH2, FADH2 will be released, that will enter the electron transport chain. All the carbon dioxide will also be released. So the respiration will be done, like oxygen is entered to break it and the carbon dioxide is released, and once the ETC occur, then only we get the energy. So up to here glycolysis is done, fate of pyruvate, link reaction. Now we go with the Krebs cycle. So there was a scientist, Hans Krebs. He explained this process, that's why we call him as a Krebs cycle. This is also called as citric acid cycle because citric acid is the first stable compound which is formed, and also called as TCA cycle, tricarboxylic acetic acid cycle. Tri means 3, carboxylic is COOH group that is there in the citrate. So in the citrate, 3 COOH groups are present. That's why we call it as a TCA cycle. And as we are mentioning, it is a cyclic pathway. It will start with the oxaloacetic acid and it will end with the oxaloacetic acid. So there are a series of reactions we'll be discussing here. So let us talk about the introduction first. We should have an idea before starting the Krebs cycle. So in the aerobic respiration, what is happening? Glycolysis is completed, that happened in the cytoplasm. Now it is converting into pyruvate. This pyruvate will be entering the mitochondria. Once it entered the mitochondria, that will convert into the acetyl-CoA with the help of an enzyme pyruvate dehydrogenase. So in this process, magnesium ions are required to activate this enzyme as a cofactor. And during this, one of the carbon will be removed, NADH2 will be formed. So this reaction is called as a link reaction. Now this acetyl-CoA is continuing the Krebs cycle in the mitochondrial matrix itself. And during that process, NADH2, FADH2 will be taken up by these complexes which are present on the inner mitochondrial membrane. So here there is a mnemonic to remember the whole Krebs cycle. All colleges in Kashmir, or else you can remember all CBSE colleges in Kerala shall start from May onwards. So A for acetyl-CoA, CBSE, C for citric acid, colleges, another C for cis-aconitase, I for isocitrate, Kashmir or Kerala, alpha-ketoglutarate, succinyl-CoA, succinate, fumarate, malate, oxaloacetate. So you can remember this to write all the intermediates. Now here glucose converted to pyruvate, pyruvate converted to acetyl-CoA. Now this acetyl-CoA will be taken by oxaloacetic acid. Oxaloacetic acid is a 4 carbon. Acetyl-CoA is a 2 carbon. Now both are forming the 6 carbon, that is citrate or citric acid. These are the oxaloacetic acid carbons. These two are the acetyl-CoA carbons. Now, with the help of an enzyme aconitase, citrate is forming the cis-aconitate. This is also 6 carbon. And again the aconitase enzyme is forming the isocitrate. This is also 6 carbon. So all these are the 6 carbon molecules. The removing of water, entry of water is common in the respiration process. Now from the isocitrate, one of the carbon will be being removed. It will become the 5 carbon molecule. So that is alpha ketoglutarate. In this case, wherever carbon is removed, there will be a releasing of the formation of NADH2. Now here, as the acetyl-CoA is a 2 molecules, from the 2 molecules of pyruvate, the whole Krebs cycle runs twice. So that's the reason 2 NADH2 are formed and 2 alpha ketoglutarate is formed from 2 isocitrate. This alpha ketoglutarate forming the succinyl-CoA, which is a 4 carbon, again one more carbon will be removed. So again NAD will becoming the NADH2. Now succinyl-CoA forming the succinic acid. Here energy source will be formed, that is in the form of GTP. GTP is equal to ATP with the help of an enzyme, succinyl synthetase enzyme. Succinate is forming the fumarate by succinate dehydrogenase. So FAD is becoming the FADH2. Fumarate, FADH2, F and F. So this fumarate further forming the malic acid with the help of fumarase enzyme, that is also 4 carbon. And in the last step, malate to the oxaloacetate, again there is a formation of NADH2. So in the whole Krebs cycle, 3 places NADH2 is forming. Here isocitrate to alpha ketoglutarate, alpha ketoglutarate to succinyl-CoA, malate to the oxaloacetate, NADH2 is formed. FADH2 is forming from succinate to the fumarate. GTP is formed from succinyl-CoA to the succinate. So if you write the Krebs cycle energetics, isocitrate to form the alpha ketoglutarate, 2 NADH2 are formed. Alpha ketoglutarate, which is 5 carbon, 2 molecules of succinyl-CoA is formed, again to NADH2. Succinyl-CoA to succinate, 2 GTP. Succinate to the fumarate, 2 FADH2. Malate to the oxaloacetic acid, 2 NADH2. So we need to remember this thing. 1 NADH2 is equal to 3 ATP, 1 FADH2 is equal to 2 ATP. So if you count it, total in the Krebs cycle, 6 NADH2 are there, means 18 ATP. 2 FADH2 are there, so 4 ATP. 2 GTP are there, 2 ATP. So total we are getting 24 ATP from the Krebs cycle, right? Coming to the link reaction, ATP is not formed, FADH2 is not formed, just that two molecules of NADH2 is formed when the pyruvate is converting into the acetyl-CoA. So total we get here is 6 ATP. So total glycolysis 8 ATP, link reaction 6 ATP, Krebs cycle 24 ATP. Total we get here is 38 or 36. But in the NCERT it is mentioned 38. What is this? If the cell is prokaryote, as the entry of this pyruvate into the mitochondria is not there. So that's why 2 ATP are saved. But if the cell is eukaryote, 36 ATP are formed because during the shuttle mechanism, for the entry of these molecules into the mitochondria, 2 ATP will be utilized. So that's why total ATP will be 36. If they are asking in the exam, NEET exam, you need to mark it as a 38. Okay. So that's how it's occurring. We mentioned here why it is different in the prokaryote and eukaryote, because the prokaryotes are having no mitochondria, so there is no loss of 2 ATP, there is no shuttle system. But if it is the eukaryote, there is the loss of 2 ATP when the pyruvate is entering the mitochondria, so it is consuming, so total ATP remains as the 36. So to give the complete energy, we have electron transport chain, means whatever they are formed in the Krebs cycle, like the FADH2, NADH2, everything has to form. So here, here it need to be NADH2. Here it should be FADH2. I'll write it here. By mistakenly just written. So as we mentioned, whenever these are entering, okay, here it will be, okay, so anyhow you can remember this. So 1 NADH2 is equal to 3 ATP, 1 FADH2 is equal to 2 ATP, right? So that has to pass through this ETC to release the energy. Here we need to understand one more thing. To understand the ETC is the hydrogen atom actually contains one electron and one proton. Let us say the hydrogen atom is like a bucket. In that bucket, one proton will be there, one electron will be there. Both are considered as a one atom. So here, this mitochondrial structure is important. Three parts are major: outer membrane, inner membrane, matrix. So in the matrix, Krebs cycle and link reactions takes place. On the inner membrane, all the complexes are present, so the ETC occurs. And the space which is present between these two membranes called as the intermembrane space. So let us see what are the complexes involved in the ETC. Firstly, 5 complexes. Complex 1, NADH2 dehydrogenase. Complex 2, FADH2 dehydrogenase or succinate dehydrogenase. Complex 3, cytochrome cytochrome BC1. Complex 4, cytochrome C oxidase. Complex 5, ATP synthase. Now between the complex 1 and 3, 2 and 3, there are 2 quinone cycles occurs, and there is a mobile carrier between the 3 and 4, that is cytochrome C. So let us see how this complete process occurs. Now this is the outer mitochondrial membrane, intermembrane space. Complexes are exactly present on the inner mitochondrial membrane. Inside of the inner mitochondrial membrane, mitochondrial matrix. Outside of the membrane, intermembrane space. Outside of the space, outer membrane. Outside of the membrane, cytoplasm. So here, these are the 5 complexes which are present. So complex 1, NADH2 dehydrogenase. So what is happening here? Whatever NADH2 formed in the glycolysis and the Krebs cycle, that will be in the mitochondrial matrix. Through the matrix, they will enter this complex, that is NADH2 dehydrogenase. Now, NADH2 is dehydrogenized to NAD. At this time, whenever proton is released, whenever hydrogen atom is released, what we mentioned, protons and electrons are passing. Now the proton electrons pass, that will be first taken up by primary acceptor, that is FMN, flavin mononucleotide. From here they are passed to the iron sulfur complex. From here they pass to ubiquinone and they become ubiquinol and send these to the complex 3. Usually complex 1 is present first, 3 is in the center, next is the complex 2. So the complex 2 here is succinate dehydrogenase or FADH2 dehydrogenase. Whatever formed in the Krebs cycle 2-FADH2, that will enter through this complex 2, form the FADH2 to FAD. Whenever the hydrogen atom is removed, one electron proton will be released, that will be taken up by FAD, that is flavin adenine dinucleotide. Now they are passed to the iron sulfur complex. Remember, iron sulfur complexes are common in all the first 3 complexes. Now through here they are sent to the ubiquinone. Quinone cycle occurs, ubiquinol is formed. So all these are sent to the complex 3. So 2 quinone cycles are occurring. One cycle between the complex 1 and 3, second cycle between complex 2 and 3. Now all these electrons are sent and all the protons are pumped through the cytochrome BC1 into the intermembrane space. Now the electrons reaching the subcomplex, that is cytochrome B, they send to the iron sulfur complex, they send to cytochrome C1, through that mobile electron carrier sent to the complex 4. So first 3 complexes are completed. So in the complex 4, these electrons are passed. This complex 4 is the cytochrome C oxidase, which is rich in the copper. Now they are sent to copper A, then 2 subcomplexes, cytochrome A, cytochrome A3, then copper B. Finally, all these electrons are passed through this complex 4 and inside of the matrix, it will make the half molecule of oxygen in the 2 protons will be bind to form the 1 water molecule. This is called as the respiratory water or the metabolic water. And 2 protons are utilized here, 2 more will be pumped into the space. Now the protons which are pumped from the complex 1, complex 2 and this complex 4, all these will be reaching the complex 5, that is the ATP synthase complex. So here at a time 4 protons will be passed. ATP synthase will be having the 2 parts, stack part and the head part. So this stack part is hydrophobic in nature, this head part is hydrophilic in nature. Now when the 4 protons are passing, ADP and inorganic phosphates will make the 1 molecule of ATP. So this is the head part here. Now due to the electron passage, negative charge will be attained into the matrix, and due to the protons, positive charge will be attained in the intermembrane space. So the electrochemical gradient will be created in the membrane to maintain this. Okay, so that's how the ETC occurs, and it is converting all the NADH2, FADH2 into the ATPs once it is running through this ETC cycle. Now let us talk about the respiratory balance sheet. Many questions will be coming from this. They'll ask the energetics. And as we already mentioned, glycolysis, 4 ATP are formed, 2 NADH are formed, there is no FADH2. So total ATP we get in the glycolysis is 8 ATP. We discussed the stepwise. And in the link reaction, no ATP, no FADH2. Only 2 molecules of NADH2 is formed, which is equal to 6 ATP. And in the Krebs cycle, 2 GTP, 6 NADH2 and 2 FADH2. Yeah. So 4 FADH2. So total 24 ATP. And all these ATP will be released once the ETC completes, total 38 ATP. So that's the balance sheet. And we have a debate about this pathway, that respiration is mainly performing the catabolism or it is mainly performing the anabolism. And the answer is both. That's why the respiratory pathway is called as the amphibolic pathway. And we know what is catabolism, the breaking down of glucose or like breaking down of anything. Anabolism, the making up. So during the respiration, food is broken down, cutting, catabolism is occurring. And after this, we have another process in the plants, that is photosynthesis, where the food is being prepared. That is anabolism. Now these two are occurring, then only amphibolism occurs. So the best respiratory substrates we discussed, carbohydrates. After that, proteins, fats, lipids, glycerols, organic acids, anything can be the respiratory substrate. So let us see how does this amphibolic pathway looks. Usually we have the respiratory substrates here, carbohydrates, fats, and the proteins. Let's talk about carbohydrates first. So in the NCERT, they gave about only catabolic reactions, but here we are mentioning the anabolic also. So this carbohydrate is breaking down into simple sugars. That simple sugars will enter the glycolytic pathway. Finally, they will form the pyruvate. So that's how the glycolysis occurs, we already studied. Coming to the fats. Fats are breaking down into fatty acids and glycerols. Now the glycerol will form the further breaking down into DHAP. Fatty acids are undergoing the catabolism process, beta oxidation of fats, forming the acetyl-CoA. Coming to this proteins, proteins will break down. As we know that proteins are made up of amino acids and the free amino acids will be formed. After the deamination, they can form the pyruvic acid, acetyl-CoA, or they can enter into the any step of Krebs cycle. Now once this breaking is done, acetyl-CoA is just like a junction. All the molecules from the fats, carbs, proteins, all the molecules are meeting at the one point, that is acetyl-CoA. If acetyl-CoA is there, Krebs cycle can occur. And in the Krebs cycle, citric acid, alpha ketoglutarate, succinyl-CoA, oxaloacetic acid, all this can be synthesized. Now this pathway, we discussed only the breaking process. Now we will discuss the making process. Like this G3P can make the glycerol. This acetyl-CoA can make the fatty acids. And again acetyl-CoA can make the free amino acids. Amino acid synthesis, acetyl-CoA is required. And this G3P can form the glycerol. And if the citric acid is there, it can give the fatty acids, fats and cholesterol. If alpha ketoglutarate is there, it can form the amino acids, proteins or the purines. If succinyl-CoA is there, chlorophyll or porphyrin can be synthesized. Oxaloacetic acid is there. It can make the amino acids, proteins and the pyrimidids. Now this process is explaining both the catabolic reactions are occurring and anabolic reactions are also occurring, right? So we have the one part, the last, it is respiratory quotient. So in simple, we call it as RQ. RQ stands for respiratory quotient or respiratory ratio. So depending on a type of substrate we are using during the respiration, we have different RQ values. So the first is, the formula is very important. RQ is equal to how much amount of carbon dioxide is evolved during the respiration divided by how much volume of oxygen is consumed during the respiration. Suppose let us talk about the carbohydrates. And we know that carbohydrates are the favorite substrates for the respiration. This is the glucose. And to break this glucose, 6 molecules of oxygen is required. With the 6 molecules of water, this is the anaerobic respiration. So 6 carbon molecules are evolved, 12 water is released, and 686 kilocalories of energy is released. Now we apply this formula. RQ is equal to how much the volume of CO2 evolved? 6 CO2. Oxygen consumed? 6. So RQ value for the carbohydrates is 1. Coming to this, same process, same glucose breaking process is occurring in absence of oxygen. Then what will be formed? Ethanol, CH3CH2OH. Two molecules of ethanol is formed, and ethanol alcohol is a two carbon compound. So carbons are released. We get the less energy as the glucose is breaking down in absence of oxygen. So the 59 calories of energy will be released. Now RQ is equal to 2 CO2 evolved by 0 oxygen consumed. Anything by 0, infinite. And we have the fats. So the example which is given here is the tripalmethane C51H98O6. It actually consumes 145 oxygen molecules, and it will release only 102 CO2 molecules and 980 molecules of water and the energy. So the RQ value will be 0.7. Even for proteins, the RQ value is less than 1. And you need to remember one thing: never be the pure proteins or the fats can be a respiratory substrates, and the most favorable one are the carbohydrates. So here is the table, it's very important. So the RQ value for the carbohydrates is 1. If it is the anaerobic respiration, alcohol or ethanol formation, RQ value will be infinite because there is no role of oxygen. And the RQ value will be 0 in the succulents, and RQ value will be less than in the case of fats and proteins, that is fat 0.7, proteins may be 0.8 to 0.1, but always less than 1. If you take the organic acids, RQ value will be more than 1, like malic acid is 1.33, succinic acid is 1.14, oxaloacetic acid is 4. So these are the RQ values.